Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 30. The clerk will report the bill.
House File number 30, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to liquor, the first engrossment.
Recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Loon, to introduce your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, well, today I am pleased to present House File 30 for the members to consider. We have seen versions of this proposal in years past on the House floor, but never as a standalone bill. So I'll briefly describe what the bill does and where we have been to get to this point. House File 30 would allow the sale of off-sale liquor on Sundays, so liquor stores to be able to sell on Sundays. It would allow that to happen between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. on Sundays. It would also prohibit a retailer from accepting delivery of alcohol on Sundays, so no delivery to those stores on Sundays. And the effective date for this is July 1st, 2017. Now, as I mentioned, we've had this debate in this body many times over. I'm sure before I got here in 2009, but certainly I think almost every year since I've been here, we've had a vote on this with sometimes very little success and other times getting a little closer. But this year it's coming to you as a standalone, and it's coming with a strong bipartisan vote of support in the Commerce Committee. I am very pleased that over the years of working on this issue that I was able to have some good conversations with those on the other side of this issue, the Minnesota Licensed Beverage Association. And so some of the changes in this bill were suggestions brought to me by those people. The limitations on the hours on Sunday, which I'm happy to do. Concerns perhaps for the number of hours for a small retailer to be open, and also concerns from the Teamsters who would not want to expand their delivery cycle to include Sundays. So we've had a good deal of discussion. I won't belabor those right now. We can talk about the bill more in third reading. But it's time, members, it's time. We're one of only 12 states that does not allow liquor to be sold on Sundays. All of our border states do. We are losing business across our borders every Sunday as Minnesotans leave our state lines to purchase something maybe they forgot or ran out of or just didn't have time to do during the week. And I'd like Minnesota retailers to be able to have that business and to keep those tax revenues here at home. So with that, I would ask for your support.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hansen moves to amend House File number 30. The first engrossment as follows, and the amendment is coded A1.
Recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hansen, to introduce your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And Representative Loon, you were mentioning that we've debated this many times. And I think the last two times I've offered a variation of this amendment to try to capture some of the increased sales tax revenue for recovery programs. And I was wondering if Representative Loon would yield for a question.
She will yield. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Loon, we've worked together to introduce House File 1091 that really incorporates this amendment as a bill that would be moving through the process. And I just want to ask if you will continue to work with me on moving that bill through the process.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Hansen, for offering your amendment and for the discussion on this issue. I think you have a very good idea, and again, members, if you haven't looked at it, it's to basically to separate the sales revenue, tax revenue that would come from the sales of alcohol on Sunday, and then appropriate that or dedicate it to recovery programs in the state of Minnesota. And it's an idea that's been discussed. And unfortunately, it's not germane to this bill, but I'm happy to be a co-author on the standalone bill and be happy to advocate for its passage.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And if anybody else would like to sign on that, it's House File 1091, Mr. Speaker. And with that, I would withdraw the amendment.
Representative Hansen withdraws his amendment. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File number 30.
Third reading. Discussion on House File 30. The member from Olmsted, Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this bill, of course, has been debated over the years. I think the first time we actually took a vote on it was in 2013, 4 years ago, when I brought an amendment to the omnibus liquor bill, I believe, and it got a vote of 106 to 21. So I hope we've come a long way. I hope that today we'll actually be able to pass this and get it off our plates. So my reason for supporting this all the time has just been that I thought it was wrong for government to tell businesses what days they should be open. And I'm a little bit, I'm glad that Representative Loon, that you've been able to reach a compromise with some of the people that are opposed to this. I hope that works. I think there's still a bit of a problem with government telling businesses what hours they can be open on a certain day of the week. But I do think this is a great deal of progress. I know there are a lot of Minnesotans who are interested in getting this done. And I don't know how many times we've actually voted on it. I think since 2013 we have voted a few times, and we've gotten more each time as more Minnesotans have become interested in it and have lobbied their legislators and have said, what the heck? Why can't I go to the liquor store on Sunday like I can every other day of the week? So thank you for your work on this, Representative Loon. I hope that we do see a big bipartisan vote.
The member from Sibley, Representative Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. Yeah, I've been a no vote on this bill, and nothing personal, Jenny, or Representative Loon. But, you know, from a business standpoint, from the feedback I get in my district is, number one, it's not going to increase sales. It's simply going to increase overhead, okay, expenses in my area. Also, I think it discriminates against the smaller business that in terms of forcing them or putting pressure on them to stay open on Sunday. I know it's still their choice. You know, and we hear about buying in neighboring states. Well, I have a longtime distributor of alcohol products, and he says the reason people go across state lines is not because of Sunday sales, but because of the taxes we impose here in the state of Minnesota compared to other states. But the second reason I oppose the bill is I grew up in a time where adults limited and restricted their freedoms for the benefit of children when it came to a product that can have severe negative consequences. As most of you remember, I did jail ministry for 13 years, and one of the questions I used to ask the prisoners who came to the Bible study is, how many of you were on alcohol or illegal drugs or both when you got arrested? I would say it's probably 90 to 95%. So, you know, I see another reason for voting against this bill is that, you know, to set an example to our children that in some of these areas, especially of products that are addictive and have negative consequences, we as adults can accept certain limitations. I know it's a small limitation, but when we look at alcohol sales, we limit it in all kinds of ways, whether it be age or the times you can offer it, as far as our society is concerned. You know, today we've embraced a new type of freedom or liberty, and I call it a licentious freedom, where adults want to do what's ever right in their own eyes. And sometimes they use the word liberty, and I prefer the term libertine, okay? Because it's a libertine type of freedom that, in my opinion, will only end in bondage and negative consequences to many people when we legalize access to some of these products that have extremely negative consequences. So I prefer, you know, the idea of putting some limits in these areas. We already have limits, and I think we need to be an example to our children that we can limit ourselves as far as adults in areas that can have negative consequences and send a nice message to the children and not, you know, not destroy the innocence of childhood, which this is just a small step in that direction. We have many other areas that we're sending negative messages to our children. So members, with that, I would urge a red vote on this. Thank you.
The member from Blue Earth, Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise because there's not a single family-owned liquor store business in Mankato in favor of this. Why? Because they know who's pushing this law. It's an avenue for big box stores to eliminate small, locally owned liquor stores. In Colorado, 127 small liquor stores closed in the first year after Sunday sales. I feel a duty to protect Minnesota businesses and small businesses. If we do not start protecting them, they are going to disappear. There are no more local department stores. There are no more local pharmacies because one sector at a time has been gobbled up by the big box stores. Now they're going after small liquor stores. That is strictly my reason for voting against it. We need to protect that so the entrepreneurial spirit, the kids nowadays are, I'm sorry, Representative Gunther, you caught me by surprise. We need to protect this so there's an avenue for people to actually own a business and work for themselves. And right now, I think we're on a road where everybody's children and grandchildren will end up working for a big box store. Thank you.
The member from Washington, Representative Lomer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, I rise to oppose this bill as well, and I guess for many, many of the same reasons as Representative Considine and Representative Gruenhagen have already stated. You know, I actually live in a district that's right on the Wisconsin border. I live in Stillwater, and I can actually see Wisconsin from my neighborhood when I take a walk. And I've talked to nearly every owner in my district, and they are all opposed to this as well. And the reason has already been stated that they do not stand to gain any more profits by being open on Sundays, but that their overhead will just increase. And it's interesting, I have another constituent that has contacted me recently about, he works with businesses, he helps them with their taxes and other financial things. And he told me that about 80% of the time that he spends now is helping people in Minnesota that own small businesses actually leave Minnesota or close their businesses. So I've been opposed to this every time it's come up, and that's been my reasons, but I've never actually gotten up and shared those reasons with you. But I just think it's, you know, not something that we want to do is go after the small businesses in our state, and that's why I would urge a red vote. Thank you, members.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm wondering if Representative Loon would yield.
She will yield. Representative Clark.
Representative Loon, I've always been a no vote on this legislation, always. And the reason has been my district in the past has had a lot of trouble. We have a high rate of addiction of many kinds, alcohol being one of the main ones, and there was a big struggle to try to close a number of our liquor stores on Franklin Avenue because of the incredible difficulty that caused for the neighborhood and for the families that were involved and so on. You just said a few minutes ago, and I just want to verify this, ask you to say a little more maybe, about something I've been trying to do for a long time, which is to increase funding for chemical dependency treatment and services. And what I'm seeing, and what I understand from Representative Hansen's amendment, is that maybe there is a commitment for the first time in a long time to increase those services. So could you just speak to that? I know I think it was reported that you would try to you would support a hearing on this. Do you, well, my first question is, are you going to really work to try to get this bill heard, House File 1091? And do you think you can be a voice, and do you plan to be a voice to help get it passed?
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Clark. Yes, I have made that commitment to Representative Hansen. I'm the first co-author on the bill. I will be speaking with our Health and Human Services Committee chairs to ask for a hearing to work on this. You know, in other issues that I work on, primarily as the chair of the Education Finance Committee, I've done a lot of work to increase help with mental health and other issues in our schools. I see this as something that would be a good purpose. It's not my primary purpose in offering this bill. It is to provide, you know, both store owners and consumers with choices. But I think Representative Hansen has brought a good idea and a good proposal forward, and I'm very happy to be supporting it, and I will be actively supporting it.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Dean yield? Would Representative Dean yield?
He will yield. Representative Clark.
Thank you. Representative Dean, I think this bill would be coming before your committee at some point, and I know one of the issues here, again, is trying to increase the funding for chemical dependency services and treatment specifically. Could you just tell me, are you, when this bill comes before you, if it does, are you inclined to support this kind of a proposal to increase, have a revenue source for increased treatment dollars for chemical dependency?
The member from Washington, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Clark. We will be having several bills coming forward that address chemical addiction and treatment, and we look forward to seeing those as they come through the process. I don't have any preconception about prioritization on those.
Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You don't have a preconception. Okay. I don't know if this is a question for Representative Loon or Representative Hansen. Do we know about what the dollars are that may be raised by this difference in selling of alcohol? Representative Loon, maybe if you would yield first.
She will yield. The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Clark, there's no way to know precisely until the law would be changed and it'd have to be measured. There are industry specialists who have looked at it and estimate that sales could increase and revenues anywhere from 4 to 7%, and the taxes on that somewhere in the range between $10 and $15 million, perhaps. Again, it's an estimate, and but in most states where the law has changed, there have been increased sales revenues.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and friends. I appreciate getting that information, and again, the opportunity to increase these services, which are just so direly needed and have been underfunded for many, many decades, means something to me. So I appreciate you giving me that information. Thank you.
The member from Dakota, Representative Christensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, members, I rose last session to talk a little bit about freedom. Freedom for consumers and freedom for businesses. You all get the emails, I get the emails, hundreds, dozens of emails asking for the freedom for businesses to be open on Sundays and consumers to be able to purchase a legal product on Sundays. Year after year, session after session, our constituents persist in asking for us to legalize Sunday sales. Members, let's listen to them. It's time. It's past time. Join me in voting yes on Sunday sales and yes on freedom.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Dean R.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As many of you may have known, over the past several years, I've voted against this bill, and I have received lots of emails from constituents asking me to support this, and I believe that this year we've gotten to a place that it looks like we're going to be able to move this bill forward, and so I will be responsive to the constituents. I'm a little bit troubled that this has become a big priority when we still haven't had a transportation bill in several years. We haven't had a bonding bill for 7 years. We're not addressing the issues around education that need to be addressed. And we're really not addressing those who struggle in the shadows of life and struggle to get by every day, that this has become our priority here. And lastly, I'd like to talk about freedom, which Representative Christian just brought up. I have a bill out there that I would ask for a hearing, House File 951, that will allow 47,000 tax-paying Minnesotans to have their right to vote restored. They're taxpayers, they're working among us, they're doing what they are supposed to do, what we've asked them to do, but because they have a criminal record, we are denying them the right to vote. So I would hope that Representative Christensen would support their freedom as they are taxpayers and sign on to my bill, and that my bill would get a hearing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member from Dakota, Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this issue has kind of become a rite of spring at the Minnesota State Legislature. And it hasn't changed much over the years. The debate was always the same. And so I really want to applaud the author, Representative Loon, for bringing forward compromise. Because my question was always, what about the small business owners that are telling us that they're concerned about their businesses? And there was an active effort made to find a compromise for those small business owners. And I congratulate the author on this. It's going to make me support the bill for the first time. And I think that it's a great lesson for all of us in terms of where we can go if we give a little bit on either side. So congratulations to the author. In that spirit, I also want to say I don't take this vote without thinking about the small businesses in my community, and I encourage all of you and everyone who emailed me, wrote me, called me about this particular bill or called your legislator, make sure that you're stopping at your mom and pop on the way home from work. Make sure that you are thinking about who you're doing business with so we can continue to have unprecedented choice when it comes to who we purchase spirits, wine, and beer from. Thank you.
Any further discussion on House File 30? The member from St. Louis, Representative Murphy, M.
Mr. Speaker, members, last week we talked about the rules. The liquor industry is a regulated industry in Minnesota. We used to have a committee that dealt with regulated industries. And that wasn't just the liquor stores and the restaurants that sold liquor. It was before B&Bs, for the most part. It was for the energy companies, the railroads, and all regulated industries. There's a lot more to regulations than what days they're open. The economic investments that had to be made in those days were huge to get a license to serve liquor or to sell liquor by the bottle or the case. But when we did away with the Regulated Industries Committee, we went to Commerce and Jobs, and it got mixed. And we chip, every year since, there's been a chip, and a chip, and a chip, and a chip. And of course, if we're dealing with a 75-year-old law, we should be looking at it on a regular basis and updating it. Of course we should, but not by chipping, and not evaluating the whole. Because we're missing stuff, and we're weakening it. and we're not making any decisions on the major things. It's time to stop the chipping. And I don't think it's going to stop today. I think the votes are here today. But it is time to look at the three-tier system of liquor regulation in Minnesota. Not just 1 out of 7 days a week that it should be open. We should be looking at the whole thing and involving every person that's involved. I got letters saying that, oh, we're going to help get so many more jobs. Sure we are. In my mind, I think places that are saying we can be open on Sunday now, they're going to hire somebody for 6 hours, an additional person for 6 hours a week. That doesn't pay the mortgage. There will be more jobs, but I bet it'll be at less pay. And the initial investments that the individuals that have their liquor stores and their families' investments in their liquor stores, that will be gone. Plus what they had to pay for the inventories, plus all the other aspects of the regulated industry. We're looking at one day, not the whole. We're looking at the economics of one little chip and not the whole. And it is indeed time to look at the whole regulated industry and the three-tier system and all the people whose economics are involved by the regulation that's being chipped at today.
Any further discussion? The member from Hennepin, Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you for a good debate. And you coming into this, that there were some people who are opposed, have been, and continue to be. And I want to say to those members, I absolutely respect your point of view on this. This has not been an easy issue for a lot of members to grapple with. But I do think that the consumers of Minnesota have spoken. They have spoken loudly. They have spoken over a long period of time, that this is something they'd like to see. You know, families have changed. Representative Gruenhagen talked about families and that. And, you know, family life and consumers are a lot busier than they were many years ago, when maybe no stores were open on Sunday. Now virtually every shopping experience is open on Sunday. And as we have more dual income families and people are being forced to run their errands on the weekends, Sunday has become the second busiest retail shopping day of the week. I personally buy my groceries on Sunday. That's when I have time to do it. And that's the experience of a lot of families, and they're looking for convenience. And they're happy to support their local liquor stores and hopefully those small businesses and that. And so for those businesses who want the choice of serving their customers on Sunday, that now provides them an opportunity. Certainly doesn't force them to. Nobody will be forced to sell liquor or be open their doors for business on Sunday if they don't want to. And no consumer will be compelled to go shopping for liquor on Sunday unless they choose to. So this is about providing more choices. I just wanted to address really briefly a concern that's been raised about the case study in Colorado. Because members, there's been a little confusion around that, and I just wanted to highlight that so members at least know what that it is referencing to about. The Department of Revenue in Colorado does an annual report every year on the activities underneath their jurisdiction, and one of those is liquor. So in 2009, their report showed how many establishments with a liquor license that were no longer in business. And there, I think, is 105 fewer in that 2009 report than the year before. But that study did not look at the impact of Sunday sales. It was simply a report on all of the activities under the Department of Revenue, gaming, all kinds of things. 2008, when Colorado changed their law, if everyone remembers 2008, was one of the worst recessions this country has ever seen, and it hit every state in the nation. If you go back in Colorado to 2001, which was also a recession time, a much shorter one, thankfully, 126 liquor stores closed then. So fewer than the ones that closed during the 2008 period. And the president of the Colorado Licensed Beverage Association commented at the time, and her comment was that even in terrible economic times, Sunday sales turned out to be a huge success for retailers and for the state's treasury. They actually had increased sales of 6% that year. So, you know, there is good news that can come from this, and I am hopeful that Minnesotans will continue to patronize small family-owned liquor stores as they do now. We're not providing any advantage in terms of the hours, which are set in state law, would continue to be set on Sunday as they are from Monday through Saturday currently. And I believe that those stores who are, again, servicing their customers, providing them the shopping experience that they want and expect, will be rewarded with loyal customers. I know I certainly will continue to be. So with that, members, again, I don't think any need to really belabor this. I think the time has come. Consumers are asking for it. Store owners are asking for it. It is time for the choice to be made. And I hope that you will choose to vote for economic freedom, for the ability of consumers to shop, for store owners to control their businesses 7 days a week if they choose, and time to bring Minnesota's liquor laws into the 21st century. I would ask for your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. Clerk will close the roll. There being 85 ayes and 45 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to.